Hi everyone, welcome to Need Some Dough. This week I was talking to a friend of mine who unfortunately is going through a hard separation. And one of the things that she is considering is whether or not to keep the matrimonial home or to move and downsize because that's easier from a budget perspective. I think it's so important for mortgage agents and brokers when they're dealing with clients that are going through separation to try to put themselves in their client's shoes as much as possible, but also to recognize that they can't. And that even if they've gone through something similar, they haven't gone through this particular scenario. And so the information is really important to convey to the client, but the decision ultimately has to be the client's, with no judgment attached. So that's really key, I think, and definitely what my friend needed when she was talking to me as a friend, of course. When people go through separation, the first thing is understanding that from a lender perspective, unfortunately, they have less borrowing power than they did, typically, I would say, as when they were married. And so once they have that separation agreement in place, which is key for someone going through separation, the lender can get an understanding of what their assets are and what they can qualify for. Sometimes they can stay where they are, and oftentimes they have to consider whether or not it makes sense to move, either to move lenders or to move homes. That decision ultimately has to be up to them. And the best thing that I can do is just advise on the options. Realistically, there's more than one factor at play, and this is where having a holistic approach and talking to your accountant and your financial advisor are so key. So for example, I have one client that went through a separation, and at the time, she and her ex-husband had joint investment properties. Even though it would have meant she would have qualified for a lower mortgage, because we did a joint consult with her accountant, we were able to determine that from a taxes perspective, it didn't make sense for her to sell the joint investment properties, or for her ex-husband, for that matter, to sell the joint investment properties that year that they were separating and getting divorced. So rather than get the better mortgage rate at that time, she chose to have a mortgage with an alternative lender. And then as soon as the investment properties were sold, we were able to refinance her and put her with an A lender. Having a plan is key because we picked a mortgage term that allowed her to do that and gave her the flexibility to do that. So for people going through separation and divorce, information, resources, having a team approach, so key, because it's a very intense process. And it's also so important for the professionals to give over the information without trying to make the decisions. And sometimes that's a hard balance to strike, but it's very important to try to do so. If you have any questions about this, feel free to reach out and stay tuned for future videos.